Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name is Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in today. On a Wednesday, as always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How you doing today on this Wednesday?
Doing great. Looking forward to the show here.
Move the mic closer. Can't hear you.
Some good topics to talk about tonight.
Oh, yeah. We got Super Bowls in the books. I'm sure most of America is happy. I'm sure Chiefs fans aren't, but I would say that America is happy overall when it comes down to this because the Eagles did win the Super Bowl. We're going to get into that basically right away, so let's jump right into it with the first topic of tonight's show, which is indeed the Kansas City Chiefs did suffer a massive loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, a 40-22 loss. It was absolutely brutal. Mahomes, 3 total turnovers in the Super Bowl. The Eagles completely crushed him on all facets of the game. Honestly, offensively, defensively, and even I would say partially on special teams because Jake Elliott, after having one of the most strange season with his kicking, relatively inaccurate, actually came up big in some crucial spots with some key penalties, dropping him the field goals back even farther, but he was still able to make a bunch of the key field goals that needed to be made. So my question to you is that overall, how surprising was this Super Bowl Super Bowl blowout loss to the Philadelphia Eagles?
I picked the Eagles to win, so I wasn't surprised that they won, but the blowout part of it was astonishing. I mean, I thought it would be a 3-point game, and it winds up 40-22, and it was 40-6 at one point, right? I mean, they got the last the Chiefs got those 2 touchdowns and 2-point conversions right at the end of the game. It was only less than 3 minutes left when they scored those 2 touchdowns. So the Eagles just totally dominated them. You look at some of the stats. Mahomes, 24 of 32, 257 yards. He had 3 TDs, but 2 of them were in garbage time. 2 interceptions. And they had no running game at all. I mean, Mahomes was the leading rusher with 4 carries for 25 yards. Hunt had 3 carries for 9 yards. I mean, nothing. Worthy had a great game. He had 8 catches for 157 yards and 2 TDs. But again, the garbage time. Kelsey, only 4 catches for 39 yards. The Chiefs had no offense. I think in the first half they had like 13 yards. It was amazingly bad. On the other side of the ball, the Eagles led at 24-0 at halftime. Hurts had a very efficient game. He was the MVP. 17 of 22, 221 yards and 2 TDs. He had 1 interception. I said they couldn't turn the ball over. They did turn it over once. It didn't hurt them. But I think the more important thing for Hurts was he had 72 yards rushing on 11 carries and a TD. Barkley, on the other hand, he didn't do much, but I think that the Chiefs were focusing on him, and the Eagles capitalized on that. Hurts running for 72 yards, Barkley had 57. You look at their 2 rushing amounts together. That's what they needed to do. So and Barkley had 6 catches for 40 yards too. So if you put his rushing yards and his receiving yards together, he was over. He had 97 yards, so he was close to 100 yards. The receiving, Smith had that beautiful touchdown catch. He had four catches for 69 yards, and Brown had a nice TD catch too, 3 catches for 43 yards. I said last week when we were talking about what the keys were and what the difference would be, I said the overall difference to me will be the Eagles' defense, which is better than the Chiefs, and they do just enough to slow down Mahomes and stop the Chiefs' running game to win the game. And I said 24-21. They more than stopped Mahomes, and they sacked him 4 or 5 times, and
6 times.
6 times. 6 times they sacked him. And the running game, the Chiefs had no running game at all. When you look back at the keys to the game that I said that the Chiefs, that they needed to stop Barkley. They did that, basically. I mean, if you look at Barkley's rushing and receiving yards together, then maybe you could say 97 yards. That's a very nice game. But given the way Barkley has played in the playoffs, running for 200 yards against the Rams, I guess you could say they achieved what they wanted to do with Barkley. But then I said they needed to limit the pressure on Mahomes by controlling Jalen Carter and the defensive line. They failed at that miserably. The defensive line has to be dominant. They weren't. They had a tush-push touchdown. And Hurts had all kinds of time to pass back in the pocket. Deep balls he threw. We had plenty of time for those. So they failed on that. It said Mahomes' success in critical moments of the game and his ability to create on scrambles was key. He had a 98 quarterback rating on 3rd down in the playoffs. He failed miserably there, mostly because he was under such terrible pressure. It really got to him. You could see he was never comfortable in the pocket, even when he had time to throw. On the other side of the ball, the keys to victory for the Eagles, I said don't turn the ball over. Well, I turned it over once. So you could say that's kind of a plus and a minus because they turned it over once. It didn't hurt them. And Barkley has to have 100-plus yards rushing to help the Eagles. They didn't get that either. But again, with Hurts rushing and Barkley's rushing and Barkley's pass catching, then they had all the yards they needed there. And number 3, I said they'll need some passing efficiency, similar to what they did in the NFC Championship game. And Hurts, again, he wound up being the MVP of the game, 17-22. Very excellent job, and his rushing was really good too. Also said they needed to contain Mahomes when the play breaks down and he tries to make a play scrambling. I give him A+ on that. And lastly, I said the number 1 defense in the league has to play like it by stepping up, stopping the run and minimizing the passing game, and they did that. So that was my analysis. The Eagles hit on the things they needed to do. They hit on 3 out of 5, and the Chiefs only hit on 1 out of 4 that I had.
I think there's 2 things we could confidently say. The first one I'm gonna annihilate immediately. Everybody now, after seeing the Super Bowl, saying, well, the Chiefs didn't have a good offensive line. They were ranked 7th in the NFL. Nobody cared. People were praising the Joe Tooney move to left tackle. Nobody had a problem with it until this game. Jawan Taylor's been a problem. He's the 3rd biggest captain on the Chiefs and has been a horrible offensive lineman for years now. Why did the Chiefs make him one of the highest paid offensive linemen on their team and honestly their 3rd biggest captain on their roster? I have no idea. But what I do know is that this offensive line was the same offensive line that won him 15 games, that allowed him to beat the Texans, that allowed him to beat the Buffalo Bills. So I don't want to hear nothing about a bad offensive line. You could perform badly, but then you can't say, oh, the entire season our offensive line was the issue. You're ranked 7th in the NFL. And going into this moment, if you include the divisional round and also the championship, you were 8th. So I don't want to hear nothing about the Chiefs having a bad offensive line. Because in this game, you got utterly destroyed. That's all you could say about it. You did not have a bad offensive line. You just got completely outplayed. Why did you never block the one guy, Josh Sweat, that was dominant in this game? Jalen Carter was a no factor in this one. It was really Josh Sweat dominating this entire game. He had, 6 pressures and 2.5 sacks? And yet you still had him one-on-one with Joe Thuney on the outside where he plays guard, but you had to move him to tackle because you didn't trust DJ Humphries. That's on Andy Reid. That's on coaching. Personnel groups were completely out of whack. At least throwing a 12 personnel or a 13 personnel to help out in the run game, which you had basically none of because you didn't even try it. So that's the first thing. I don't want to hear complaining about the offensive line. Unless you want to say, in this game, you got destroyed. But don't tell me it's been an issue the entire year, because this is the exact same offensive line that led you to a 15-2 record, that went up against the Houston Texans pass rush with Danielle Hunter, with Will Anderson, that we just saw them dominate in the wild card round against Justin Herbert, with Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, 2 top-tier tackles in the NFL, completely dominated Justin Herbert in the backfield. And then going up against the Buffalo Bills and still performing against their pretty good defense. I don't want to hear nothing about a bad offensive line all year. I don't want to hear it. Here's the second thing. The GOAT debate's over for at least a number of years now. The GOAT debate is over. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback and arguably, but maybe not, the greatest player of all time. Mahomes in this one, Brady never got blown out in the Super Bowl. He had 3 crippling losses, 2 against the Giants and 1 against Nick Foles. But we can look at those Super Bowls and say, well, against the Giants, both those Super Bowl losses combined were 7 points. Mahomes in his 2 Super Bowl losses combined 40 points. That's an issue. That's sad. Brady never got blown out in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes has. And we can talk about the defense, which, by the way, going up against a Saquon Barkley-led offense of the Philadelphia Eagles, they were ranked 8th against the run, and they did their job. They held Barkley to under 2.5 yards per carry. Mahomes just played terribly. And let's bring up some footage, shall we? This is Mahomes' turnovers in this game because they were bad. This interception, no idea why he threw it. Cooper DeJean, by the way, second rookie in NFL history to have a pick 6. Congratulations to him. It was a beautiful play, beautiful pick, beautiful read, led it back for a touchdown. This one, Mahomes has 0 pocket presence. Joe Thuney gets backed up into Mahomes. He throws an interception. By the way, great catch by Zach Bond. Mahomes could have stepped beautifully to his right and tried to make the throw. He instead let Joe Thuney run into him. Bad pocket awareness. And this one was a strip sack. I'm not really going to fault him for it because it was a hell of a play. He did get his face smashed in. But you know what? That's just kind of the aim of the game here. It was a great play. By the way, that's a hold on the center. I think that's Jalen Carter, if I'm not mistaken. It might not be, but Jalen Carter was getting held there. But what about Mahomes just getting antsy, and Brady called this out? As soon as the ball gets snapped, it's a clean pocket. But Mahomes has no confidence in his own ability to step into a throw. By the way, look at the middle of the field. I think that's Juju Smith-Schuster. He was wide open in the middle of the field. But as soon as the ball gets snapped, Mahomes got the happy feet, and he can't control his own anxiety in the game. So Mahomes early in this game, by the way, and that's when it was the pick 6 was when it was 10-0. And by the way, we look at Nick Wright, who is extremely right all season about the Chiefs. Guess what? And I completely agree. Mahomes down 10-0. I thought he'd at least make this game interesting. I didn't expect him to completely collapse against an Eagles team. I really didn't. Because we see Mahomes be down by, 20 points. He comes back, be down 9-0 early in the game, and he comes back. And by the way, this game was an exact replica of how the Buffalo Bills game went. The Bills got the ball. They forced them to punt. Then the Chiefs got the ball. The only difference is, and by the way, if you score on that possession where you make the opening team who gets the ball punt, you get the ball and score, that's a 65% winning percentage immediately. So the Chiefs are actually playing into their own game plan the way that they just beat the Buffalo Bills, where they force the Bills to punt, they get the ball, and then they score. The only difference is Mahomes didn't score. That was the big thing. And honestly, there was a 3rd and 9, if I'm not mistaken, on the opening drive. Mahomes nearly got picked off in that play, too. He threw it into double coverage. So Mahomes played very poorly in this one. Brady never played poorly in a Super Bowl. Did he not play great? Sure, especially early on. He was a game manager, but he made the plays when it mattered. In fact, there's a stat out there by the Athletics' Jeff Howe. In 10 Super Bowl appearances, Brady left the field in the 4th quarter, meaning at any point with a lead 9 times. The one that he didn't lead in was against the Falcons, where he was able to tie the game when it mattered at the very end of regulation. He led a 19-point comeback. I mean, it was incredible. It was utterly insane. The final 4th quarter drive, which ended score 28-28. They were down, 28-3, if I'm not mistaken. And Brady came all the way back, and that's the only game where he didn't lead at any point in the 4th quarter because they had to tie up the game, which sent it into overtime late, which they ultimately ended up winning. By the way, unanswered the entire way. 28-3, unanswered points. So Brady never got blown out in the Super Bowl. Mahomes has put up 2 horrible losses. I don't want to hear complaining about the offensive line unless your only take on the offensive line is they got outplayed in this game, but not the entire season, which I've seen a lot of. Oh, we knew we had a bad offensive line. Really? A bad offensive line that went up against Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson and was able to stop them for the most part. And then you go up against the Buffalo Bills pass rush in the playoffs, and you did a pretty good job. Their offense was able to put up 32 points in that game, and also in the regular season led you to 15 wins. I don't want to hear it. I think that the Eagles overall played phenomenal, but when it comes to the Chiefs, ultimate choke job. This is a team that was going for a three-peat. They were filming. Travis Kelce, I didn't even play this clip. I think, do we have the Travis Kelce clip? Showed no effort on the sidelines. Look at him. No effort on this play. By the way, the guy who's in coverage with him ends up tackling Mahomes. And people say, well, he saw the flag. The flag doesn't get thrown until he throws his hands up. So I don't want to hear it at all. Travis Kelce, the lack of effort on this play. This is a quit play, right? And this is late in the game. So, Mahomes, I mean, we already heard Travis Kelce today on his podcast with his brother say that he has to, take a step back and contemplate whether or not he's retiring. We're going to talk about Travis Kelce on Friday's show. But this was an ultimate choke job. Eagles outplayed him completely. Mahomes and this Chiefs team showed no fight. And I might add, just to bring it up when it comes to Patrick Mahomes, let's take a look at what happened before garbage time. The first 11 drives of the game. This is what Mahomes did. 54% completion percentage, 159 total yards, 6.7 yards per pass, 1-3 touchdown to turnover ratio, and a passer rating of 52.8. At halftime, he had a passer rating of 10.7. 10.7.
Terrible.
With 6 of 14 completions, 33 yards, 2 picks.
I agree with you on the Brady-Mahomes comparison. Brady is the GOAT. Mahomes, 2 terrible Super Bowl losses. One of them to Brady, let's remember.
Correct.
And also Brady beat him in the AFC Championship game in Kansas City, remember? So I think that I never thought that Mahomes had reached the comparison stage to Brady, and this just proves it further. I think you'll stop hearing those kinds of comparisons. Mahomes now with 3 Super Bowl wins and 2 losses, and Brady at 7-3. A long way to go to catch Tom Brady. In terms of playoff wins, Mahomes at 17 now, Brady at 36, I believe. No way he's going to ever catch him there. And I know about Andy Reid and the comparison to Bill Belichick. Maybe that's still a little bit closer comparison, but I still think Bill Belichick has a pretty good lead on Andy Reid as well.
So let's take a look at this. And phenomenal job with this. So the eye test looked pretty bad. And if we talk about Mahomes' expected points added per dropback, EPA per dropback, in the first 3 quarters is a minus 0.62, which is the worst of any game of his career, and the second worst of any quarterback in a Super Bowl since 2000. The only one that beat him was Rich Gannon in the 2002 Super Bowl, where he threw 5 picks, 3 that were pick sixes. But let's get rid of garbage time, because yes, we saw against the Eagles' backups, Mahomes has some great plays. Let's take away garbage time. Out of the last 7 years of the Super Bowl, Mahomes has the worst EPA per dropback at minus 1.248. And in case people don't know what EPA is, essentially every Mahomes dropback, he was costing his team a point. That's what that means. Mahomes, the greatest quarterback of all time. Every time he said hike, was losing his, and by the way, losing his team 1.28 points per dropback. And if we take a look at some other bad quarterbacks, because we like to, talk about data on this show, Zach Wilson's EPA per dropback, minus 0.21. Deshaun Watson, minus 0.715. And by the way, and we're talking about strictly Super Bowls, Mahomes is 14 out of 14th on that. The next highest is Jared Goff at minus 0.302. More than 4 times worse than the next lowest quarterback. That was Mahomes in the Super Bowl.
Interesting.
And speaking about that Super Bowl, I didn't even mention it. We can't talk about the offensive line because this wasn't 5 backups. These were the 5 starting offensive linemen for the Chiefs. So that just adds to it. You can't complain about the offensive line. It was the exact same one, essentially, that you had out there all season.
Yeah.
Instead of what? You didn't have DJ Humphries through the last few weeks of the season. Andy Reid didn't trust him, so you put Joe Tooney out there at left tackle. Okay, put him back at guard. I'm confused. Travis Kelce tried the chip block, which were pitiful attempts at that. I mean, you didn't double Josh Sweat at all in this game, it seemed. You decided to double Jalen Carter, who was basically a no factor in this game.
Because he was double teamed.
But still, Josh Sweat, normally you would create adjustments in the second half to the guys who are making the biggest impact in the game, which was Josh Sweat on defense.
I agree.
Ultimate choke job.
I agree with your comparisons of Brady to Mahomes and Mahomes having the poor Super Bowls. Mahomes has won 3 Super Bowls. Let's not forget that. I mean, he's not the worst. So did Brady. He's not the worst quarterback out there. I mean, most other quarterbacks would die for Mahomes' record so far in his career. I mean, he's made the Super Bowl how many times?
5 of the last 6 years.
5 of the last 6 years. He's only been in the league 7 years, so he's doing a lot of things right. I'm not criticizing him for that. He played very poorly on Sunday. You can't do that. If you want to be in the discussion about being the GOAT, you can't have games like that. He's had 2 of them in the Super Bowl.
One of which was against Brady.
Yeah.
But again, people like to put the asterisk because of the offensive line. What's the asterisk for this one? Seriously, what excuses can Chiefs fans make up about why their team played so poorly? There are no excuses.
There aren't any. Well,
against Brady, it was because you had 5 new offensive linemen, basically.
And the ref situation in this game,
there were bad calls both sides.
They made poor calls against both sides.
But late in the game, it didn't matter.
No, late in the game never mattered. And actually, after those 2 calls, it really didn't matter after that.
And by the way, the Eagles actually, I believe, were the more penalized team in this game anyway. Yeah, the Eagles got called for 8 penalties. Chiefs got called for 7. So actually, the data still aligns with that, by the way, with teams being out penalized compared to the Chiefs.
Yeah,
but it didn't matter because there were a couple questionable calls early, but when it came down to it, they weren't egregious. They weren't with a minute left in the game on the line, going in Mahomes' favor. I thought it was who plays the best. And in this case, it was the Eagles through and through, which we're going to talk about in this one because Jalen Hurts named Super Bowl MVP and also gets his first Super Bowl ring. Saquon, first season with the Eagles, gets his first Super Bowl ring. Nick Sirianni's Super Bowl ring. A bunch of guys coming out big time to play. A.J. Brown getting his ring. Devontae Smith getting his ring. Josh Sweat getting a lot. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. What a phenomenal season they had as rookies. But this was an ultimate dominant job from the Philadelphia Eagles, shutting down the Kansas City Chiefs, allowing them only 23 yards in the first half. The Eagles had more plays in the first half than Chiefs had total yards. It was utterly ridiculous. So Jalen Hurts, though, big X factor in this one, nearly 300 total yards, 3 total touchdowns. Did have 1 interception. That was a bad decision, but he was pressured, so we don't really care about that. He was named Super Bowl MVP, although the fan vote, which is about 25% of the Super Bowl MVP vote, said Josh Sweat should have won it, which I kind of agree with. But I want to get your take. What was your reaction to the Eagles' dominant win on Sunday?
Well, I've kind of recapped most of that already. I think the key was they came ready to play. They were ready to play. They from the opening snap. They looked good. They looked good the whole game. They never let up. I mean, it was 24-0 at halftime. They came out as if it was 0-0, and in the second half. And I think that the Chiefs, on the other hand, they had a history this year of starting slow. And they did that again this time, but then they just got worse. And Mahomes, those turnovers were just really very poor. The DeJean interception, you should have seen him. Actually, can you play that one again?
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to see that one again. Because, look, he throws the ball.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here's the right clip.
Okay.
Rolls to his right.
He throws to his right, but look right behind him. The guy who was trying to throw it to was covered like a blanket.
Yeah.
It might have been, if it hadn't been DeJean picking it off, the other guy might have picked it off.
Maybe.
So it's just very poor decision-making on Mahomes' part. And the other interception right down there by the goal line was very poor as well. I mean, he kind of, it didn't look like it had a chance of being completed anyway.
Let's get that. Yeah,
look at this one. Yeah, it throws it down. It was going to be on the ground before it even got close to the receiver, right? The receiver has passed the first down.
It would have been behind him at the very least.
It would have been behind him, and it would have been on the ground, it looks like. So, I don't know. He wasn't ready to play. I don't know why that was. The Eagles, on the other hand, we've been pretty hard on Nick Sirianni all year, but the fans also calling for him to be fired. a few games into the season when they started out so slow and lost 2 games. But after the bye, they figured it out, and I give Nick Fangio lots of credit here. I mean, he had that defense playing better every game, and they ended the season on a roll. They were dominant in the playoffs. Actually, the Rams gave them the hardest time of any team. Rams had an opportunity to win the game near the end there, and it was the defense that saved it for them with Carter making the sack on Stafford right near the end there that really sealed it for the Eagles. So I give the defense lots of credit. I think they were well coached. They had rookies in there, DeJean. They had veterans too. What's the guy that number 55?
Brandon Graham.
Yeah, he was in there. And maybe that was his last game. Brady mentioned him, saying, "Ooh, I don't like that guy." He's the one that knocked the ball out of Brady's hand there, strip sack, when they could have driven for the win in the Super Bowl. So, I just can't say enough good things about the Eagles here. I think if they can continue playing like this, they're headed for a dynasty. They could be a dynasty. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, we'll talk about a Saquon quote on Friday's show, but what's crazy is that I listed my 3 keys to the Eagles' victories, on Friday's show. These are the 3. Don't lose your identity, win in the trenches, and take Travis Kelce away. So let's go down through it. First of all, don't lose your identity. Their identity all season has been, let's run the ball through Saquon and create an effective offense. Even though Saquon couldn't run at all in this game, what happened? He still ran it 25 times. So it didn't matter. He was still a threat at all times because they kept feeding him and feeding him and feeding him. Jalen Hurts also 11 carries, 72 yards, and a push touchdown. Also, they got Saquon involved in the passing game. So Saquon was not just a sitting duck like James Cook ended up being because they decided to nearly outsnap him with Ty Johnson. Like, that was one of the stupidest decisions Sean McDermott and that offense had. Nearly splitting reps 50-50 with James Cook and backup Ty Johnson. Instead, the Eagles came in and said, you know what? Saquon's going to average 2.3 yards a carry. It's not going to matter. We're going to keep feeding him and feeding him and feeding him because he is our offense. He is our X factor on this team. So we're going to keep making him a threat and see if the Chiefs keep biting, which the Chiefs kept doing a phenomenal job. All credit to the Chiefs' running defense. They did a tremendous job at stopping Saquon Barkley. How about let's go to the next one that I have out here. Winning in the trenches. Offensive line held up, gave Jalen Hurts plenty of time to throw, made some miraculous throws that I'm going to show you in a couple minutes here. The defensive line, enough said right there. Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter. Let's see some other top-tier players. Oren Burks had a couple nice plays. Milton Williams had a tremendous game in this one. But yeah, offensive line. Zach Bond, the linebacker, he had an interception in this game. He should definitely get signed, this offseason. So the Eagles in the trenches, they won 100%. Offensive line, defensive line did their jobs expertly. Now let's go to the last one. Take Travis Kelce away. So let's talk about this one for 2 seconds. Because Travis Kelce, let's bring up his Super Bowl stats in the basically up until Sunday. These were his numbers in the Super Bowl. He wins 75% of his games, 37 targets to 31 catches. He has 87.5 receiving yards in the game in the Super Bowl's 2 touchdowns, and he has 116.6 passer rating when targeted. He was a no-show in the Super Bowl. He had a couple, one or two drops, or you could maybe say that they were thrown behind him, so you wouldn't credit him with a drop. I don't think PFF credited him with any drops, so fully on Mahomes here. But they did everything they needed to do. Check. They did everything that I thought would be a key to getting this victory. They didn't lose their identity. Saquon ran it 25 times. Jalen Hurts had a couple incredible scrambles in this one. Beautiful pocket awareness. They won in the trenches as well. Defensive line, offensive line won on both facets of the game, and they took Travis Kelce away. Completely a no factor in this game. I do want to talk about Jalen Hurts, though, because I think Super Bowl MVP deserves his flowers more. These throws, these plays were incredible, so let's break it down right now. If we have the clip, here we go. So Jalen Hurts, this one, kind of under pressure, makes a beautiful throw on a 2nd and 11. Beautiful touch on the football, gets it down to the 1-yard line. What about this one? Beautiful back shoulder to A.J. Brown. How many quarterbacks could do that with this tremendous amount of accuracy? Props to Jalen Hurts through and through. What about this throw? I mean, this was a beautiful touch on the ball. Offensive line held up. Rainbow breadbasket right to Devontae Smith for really the killer, 34-0. And this one, pressure in your face. This was the 1-yard line throw again. I mean, Jalen Hurts played tremendous. We saw him, though. We've seen him in 2 straight Super Bowls put up an insane game. Except this time, he added his legs, which is even a massive factor in this one. Nearly 300 total yards. Offensive line did its job. There was actually one scramble that I didn't have here that I should have included, where I think it was Leo Chanel, if I'm not mistaken. He broke on the left side. The left side of the offensive line broke down. And it almost looked like it would have been a repeat of the Super Bowl 57 strip sack that cost the Eagles the game in that one. But instead, Jalen Hurts, pocket awareness, steps up, goes for, I think, 17 yards. I mean, it was a tremendous beatdown by by the Eagles defensively. And then offensively, Jalen Hurts just made the plays that he has now in 2 straight Super Bowls that he's been to. I thought Cooper DeJean, pick 6, we showed that earlier on in the show, was a second rookie in NFL history to have a pick 6 in a game. Quinyon Mitchell all season being a lockdown defensive back. And by the way, these 2 rookies actually replaced starters. James Bradbury got hurt. That's where Quinyon Mitchell comes in. And Cooper DeJean came in for Avonte Maddox, who got benched. Who, by the way, Avonte Maddox had a pass break on this one on the 4th and 5 to, I think, Hollywood Brown. So everybody came into play. Everybody stepped up in a massive way. Devontae Smith, 4 catches, 69 yards and a touchdown. A.J. Brown, 3 catches, 43 yards and a touchdown. I mean, I think that this is one of the all-time performances just all around in the Super Bowl because there is no asterisks. There is no, our offensive line is filled with backups. Nope, the Chiefs got all their starters out there that they wanted. You could have moved Tooney back to guard and put in DJ Humphries. You could have done that. They decided not to. They rolled with the offensive line that worked in the past couple weeks. So I give all props to the Philadelphia Eagles. Saquon, he nearly had 100 total yards. But where he's a massive factor in is the running game. Did essentially nothing except just be the potential threat, even though the Chiefs had him all game. That's how dangerous Saquon Barkley is if you think about it. You could run in 25 yards. He averages 2.3 yards a carry, and you still blow him out offensively just because the Chiefs had no answers for what the Eagles were doing offensively.
Well, the overall running game was good for the Eagles. Hurts had 72 yards.
They ran it
Barkley
45
had
times.
57 yards, and Barkley had the 6 catches for 40 yards, too. Most of those coming out of the backfield. So.
He also had like a helmet catch, too, falling backwards. He bobbled the ball. I mean,
I'm happy for the Eagles. I'm happy for Saquon Barkley. I'm happy for Jalen Hurts. He went to Disney World. I saw pictures of him down there. He looked like he was having a good time. I wonder, do you think that perhaps next year is a rubber match? The Chiefs won the first one. The Eagles have won now. Do you think they both get back there?
No. I think that, and we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, in an upcoming show here. Both teams have big-time free agency potential losses. Some very key players. Like, for instance, the Eagles could potentially lose Zach Bond, who had a phenomenal season this year. Oren Burks, I'm pretty sure, is going to be a free agent this year. Brandon Graham may retire. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. And the Chiefs, I have to take a little, like Trey Smith is going to be gone potentially in free agency. I have to look a little bit deeper on who the exact free agents are. I have them saved somewhere, but I don't have them available for this topic. But we're going to talk about, I'm sure we're going to talk about who will most likely get back to this point, maybe next year or the year after. But Saquon also thinks that why not start of their dynasty? That'll be a Friday topic. A little hint at what we're doing, upcoming in 2 days. But I'm shocked. I picked the Chiefs just because it's a safe pick. Although, I will preface, I said on Friday's show, I'm with America here. My heart was for the Eagles through and through. My heart was with the Buffalo Bills.
Well, my heart and my pick were with the Eagles.
It was a smart pick. Very, very smart pick.
Did I think they were going to win 40 to basically 6?
Yeah.
Because the Eagles put their backups out there, and that's when the Mahomes started bombing it.
Just to add some context, this was before the backups came in.
Yeah.
This was Mahomes' performance after that, before that 12th drive. Yeah. No, I don't think anyone predicted 40 to 22.
Yeah.
Everyone expected it to be a close game. But this is an all-time beatdown. I'm curious, though. What do Chiefs have as an excuse for this Super Bowl? There is none.
No, I agree.
The prior loss, you said you had 5 backups on the offensive line. It got absolutely shredded by the Bucs defense. But this one, you got beaten on the offensive line. You had no running game. Your receivers, besides Xavier Worthy, you had a tremendous game.
You had poor play from your quarterback.
Your quarterback sucked. Your defense couldn't stop really anybody besides Saquon, but it was a no factor because
no
Jalen Hurts had 72 yards.
No running game at all.
I mean, what's crazy is, like I said, the Eagles didn't lose their identity. They ran it 45 times.
Yeah.
And the running backs, the running backs here, 2.3 yards for Saquon Barkley, 1.7 for Kenneth Gainwell.
Huh.
The running backs did nothing. Yeah. 2 yards a carry when it came to the running backs. Jalen Hurts, though, he was the big runner in this one.
Took a lot of time off the clock by doing that.
Time of possession-wise,
move.
It was 36 minutes to 23 minutes.
You can't say that the Chiefs beat themselves either. I mean, they had
early on, Mahomes.
No, but I'm saying this because they did have the turnovers in the first half and they were behind 24-0. But it was because of the Eagles' dominance. I mean, the Eagles are dominating them. It wasn't those 2 turnovers from Mahomes. Okay, maybe that's 14 points, right? The Eagles scored 40 points in this game.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and one of them directly went to a touchdown. Cooper DeJean pick 6.
Right.
And Zach Bond, I think 2 plays later was the A.J. Brown touchdown.
Yeah. So there were 14 points off the turnovers by Mahomes, but they scored 40 points. So they didn't even have to have those, and they still blowing them out.
Yeah, it was an all-time beatdown. Well, one of the greatest Super Bowl victories, I think, just with the amount of weight that's in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs were going for a three-peat, the first three-peat in NFL history.
Yeah.
And by the way, I just want to point this out: the Eagles now have stopped 2 back-to-back three-peats. Patriots in 2016 to 18, and now the Chiefs doing it the past 3 years here. I'm going to take a quick break, but coming up, Deebo Samuel. I think this was expected. We talked about this earlier on in the regular season. Deebo Samuel's probably going to be on the move, as well as Aaron Rodgers is not confirmed. I thought it was confirmed, but not really.
Oh, really?
Jordan Schultz says that it's not a done deal, that Rodgers will be out as the Jets quarterback. And also, Kellen Moore, officially, we knew this was coming. Kellen Moore is the head coach of the Saints. We'll debate all that and discuss that right after this break.
Traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online. And Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley eSIM data gift.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the comment.
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with. Where they're finding inner balance. And why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name's Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in today on a Wednesday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic of tonight's show, which is Deebo Samuel is probably going to be on the move. He requested a trade from the 49ers, and they allowed Deebo Samuel to find a trade partner. Wide receiver, half running back. He kind of fell apart in this season, although you could maybe blame injuries around the team, CMC being out. So Deebo Samuel's effectiveness, you could argue, was hindered because they didn't have the powerful, force of their offense just 1 year prior. But it does look like a once tremendous wide receiver. Arguably, you could put him in the top 10 a couple of years ago when he had 1,400 total yards, maybe even more than that, maybe 19. I haven't looked at the exact number here. 1,700 yards, yeah. It looks like he'll probably be on the move sometime this offseason. So my question to you is, how big of a market do you think Deebo Samuel actually has?
Well, I would, before I get into that, I'd say, why did he ask for a trade? I think he saw the handwriting on the wall here. the 49ers are going really in a different direction with Pearsall, Jennings, and Ayuk. Although Ayuk, it's a little bit of a question mark. He's coming back off a ACL, MCL. Whether he'll really be effective or not remains to be seen. So you could say maybe there's a question mark there with the receiver core for the 49ers, and they'll probably have to do something there. I'll talk about that in a minute. He asked for a trade in 2022 as well, but then he signed a 3-year, $71.5 million contract, and he hasn't played anywhere near the year he had in 21 since. He had 1,770 yards in 21, 14 touchdowns, and helped the 49ers get into the Super Bowl. Over the past 3 years, he's averaged 56 receptions, 731 receiving yards, four TDs a season receiving, and about close to 200 yards rushing and 3 TDs. His 2024, as you mentioned, it was his worst season. 806 scrimmage yards, 4 TDs, as yards per carry were only 3.2. Before that, he had like 6 yards a carry.
6.1 the prior season. Yeah,
he had injuries, missed a couple of games, but he may have been requested to take a pay cut too, because you've got Kittle and Purdy that do contract extensions, and those are going to be expensive, and they've kind of said they're committed to Purdy. He's 29 years old. What will the 49ers get for him? Is probably maybe a late first round, early second round pick. He's not really a traditional receiver, as you mentioned. He can be a running back as well. He can return kickoffs too. Diggs went for a second round pick. Last year, 107 catches, 1,183 yards, 8 TDs. The Bills had to give a couple of picks, though, to get a second-rounder in return, a 2024 fourth-round pick and a 2025 fifth-round pick. So, they really didn't get that much for Diggs when you look at that. They look at their remaining receivers. They got Jennings, Pearsall, and Ayuk. But as I mentioned, Ayuk recovering from the ACL, MCL. I think they'll need to draft another receiver. That'd be the cheapest route, because Kittle and Purdy do these extensions. Maybe they go after a second level guy. Slayton is out there. Woods will probably be out there. Amari Cooper will be available. What teams might Deebo go to? I think the Commanders look like a potential suitor for him. They need somebody to complement McLaurin. The Steelers, I think they would, if they went the running route and went with Justin Fields as their quarterback, I personally think Deebo Samuel would be an excellent addition for them. Houston, maybe Nico Collins, because you got Tank Dell with the dislocated kneecap. Whether he'll be back next year or not remains to be seen. You look at the money side of this, before, if they don't trade him before, or they do trade him before 6/1, June 1st, dead cap money is $31.5 million. The cap charge is $15.9 million. The acquiring team's going to have to pay him $17.5 million. That could be a factor in 2025, although it's not guaranteed. He has a $15.4 million option bonus on at the end of March. But if they use their 6/1 designation, they could split the amount of dead cap money over 2 years. Plus, there's a way they can get out of paying. They can reduce the dead cap money. It's quite complicated, but I think the money part of it could be an issue for an acquiring team, which means that maybe the San Francisco doesn't get all late first round pick or an early second round pick. And the fact that they let him go out in a trade here when they got this much dead cap money, I think is pretty generous of them in a way. I guess they look at him, maybe they think he might be a little over the hill now with the way he's played since he got the big contract.
Well, I'll say one thing. You're not getting a late first-round pick for him. Not a chance. With a declining player who complained this past year about getting the football, and in that game, by the way, that was Week 15 against the Los Angeles Rams, he had arguably the worst game he's ever played in. He He had a terrible drop that probably he'd still be running, beyond the end zone now. I mean, wide open. We're talking about just the biggest insult to injury. You were complaining about getting the ball, so they force-fed you with 7 targets. You catch 3 of them and have a bad drop. Yikes. And then you also got into a sideline confrontation with your kicker. Not a great look for you. It's just not. So when it comes to Deebo, how big is his market? I'm sure there is a market, and I think if you look at just the odds, he's got a bunch of teams, pretty much I think every team, but it really comes down to not leaving the 49ers is obviously the highest odds at plus 250, but the Steelers, Denver, and the Panthers, they're right now, Denver and Panthers are tied for, if we're taking the 49ers out, I think he's going to be gone. He's going to be a cap casualty. He's a killer on the 49ers cap, especially with a team that's trying to move off him with Ricky Pearsall. I think that there's no shot. So when it comes to me, the Steelers are the favorites. Denver, Carolina tied for second place, and then Washington rounds out the number 4 spot there. So I think if I'm seeing how big of a market will he have, I think he'll have a decent market. I think if it really comes down to it, I think there's actually a potential where the 49ers release him. Because I just think at this point, what do you have him there for? You have Brandon Ayuk, you have CMC, you have George Kittle, you have Ricky Pearsall. You more so need offensive line.
CMC may be over the hill.
I'm not going to completely disagree with you, but he is under contract. I think he's making $19 million this following year. At least that's the average annual value of his contract here.
I mean, don't you think they can get something for him? I don't think they would release him.
I mean, if you're asking for a late first, early second, no shot.
Well, if they can't get that, they'll take what they can get.
If you're Carolina, maybe, just because you're a bad franchise. But if you're Washington, nope, because you just made the NFC Championship game with the current team that you have now. If you're Denver, you're like, well, I just made the playoffs with a rookie quarterback. I feel pretty good. Although you would obviously want to get number 2 option next to Cortland Sutton. If you're the Steelers, I don't know.
Well, who's the quarterback going to be for the Steelers? That's the big question.
Let's just say it's one of the. It doesn't matter if it's Russ or if it's actually. I'm sure you would think so.
I think it would be better for. It would be good if Deebo were there to have Justin Fields.
I would agree with that. And now here's also the thing: George Pickens seems like not a good locker room guy. Very combative, it seems. He was asked, in the end of season conference if he saw any changes, and he goes, yeah. And then he seemed like he was just very negative, and he wants out. Deontay Johnson was an issue on the field. Guess what? He's on his 7th team in 2 years. It's ridiculous. It's an exaggeration in case legitimate people. He's gone to what? He's been to the Steelers, the Panthers, the Ravens, and then they got released, and then back to the Ravens. I might be missing a team in there. But he's been all over in this season, which is ridiculous. I think George Pickens, similar thing. But maybe that's a good option to go Deebo, although George Pickens may complain about getting the football. Who knows at that point? Washington, I think right now is the number 1 option. I think it would be Denver number 2. And I'm going to throw out a team that needs a wide receiver. The New England Patriots. I think the Patriots, or if we're looking for a team that apparently needs to completely retool its offense, the Kansas City Chiefs. Why not? Why not? They got D-Hop, and he made some impact throughout the season, but not really that big of an impact. People complain now about Mahomes' wide receiver group that he's playing with a bunch of bums. I don't know, Hollywood Brown, I don't know. He seemed to have a couple nice catches late in the regular season. Xavier Worthy seems like a pick. And D-Hop, he's D-Hop. People still fear him because he's DeAndre Hopkins.
He was wide open, and Mahomes missed him for a pass that would have been a touchdown.
That was a clear drop. Clear drop on that one. I'm not going to fault Mahomes for that one.
Why? He didn't. It wasn't near him.
It was a complete drop.
No, it wasn't. You don't have that clip.
I don't have that.
Yeah, maybe we see that on Friday.
One where D-Hop was wide open and he extended his left arm and couldn't reel the ball in?
I didn't think Bailey even touched the ball. It was I think that was on Mahomes. That play was on Mahomes.
No, it was not. I'm going to play that clip, I'm sure, on Friday when we talk about
We'd like to see that.
You're going to be wrong about that one, Chief. But, think about this. This is what Deebo's season was, besides the drop. He had only 2 carries of 10-plus yards, the lowest number in his career since 2020. He averaged 3.1 yards in separation, the lowest of his career. When we take a look just about the stats just in general, he had 670 receiving yards, the lowest since 2020. If we take a look at touchdowns, it's the lowest since 2022, where he only played in 13 games. He started in 12 of them. He was yards per game, lowest in his career. I mean, he had a career low this season, and you're expecting a late first, early second? You need to be a very desperate team. Maybe the Panthers are a desperate team. You got rid of Jonathan Mingo. All you got is really Adam Thielen.
Yeah, and he's old.
Maybe you're desperate. Maybe you are. But in that case, I don't know.
I like him going to the Commanders or the Steelers, depending on who the Steelers quarterbacks.
I think the Broncos are going to put in a good bid.
I think that would be a nice fit.
That makes sense because you could also use Deebo in the backfield to help out with the running game.
Exactly.
Because you're saying Steelers run the football. I think they were the 4th highest running team. But yeah, they don't have an offensive line, which is not that great. But I think Denver will make a solid bid. That's what my estimation would be. They would go in there, but I do think that there is a
Do they really need him? I mean, they have Mims and they have Cortland Sutton.
Okay, we're not gonna talk about it. Marvin Mims being an X-Factor. Nobody's fearing Marvin Mims.
I don't know.
He makes a couple nice deep catches. Same with Vele. He made a couple great catches this season. But Cortland Sutton right now is their X-Factor. You need another threat, and Deebo's a threat because you could also use him in the running game. I think that's what. By the way, he said, I don't know how many years ago it was at this point, that he didn't want to be a guy in the backfield. But that's something that is very intriguing for another team. And if I'm not mistaken, it was either this past offseason, the offseason before, he requested a trade too. So who knows? And then he got his extension. It was over a contract situation.
$71 million, and then he started playing like crap.
So this is the second time in Deebo Samuel's career he has requested a trade. Once again, not a great look. It just isn't. I don't think he has a tremendous market like if a T. Higgins or a Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase would have an insane market. But T. Higgins is about to hit the open market. I guarantee you, the Broncos, Commanders, Steelers, they'll all be looking at T. Higgins before they even sniff Deebo Samuel. I mean, T. Higgins is a wide receiver 1 playing wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. I think the Patriots also, I'm sure the Patriots would make a pretty decent bid for Deebo as well. It's just the Patriots, nobody wants to go to New England. Yeah, that's just the way it is.
That could be changing.
Maybe win some games first, and then I would agree with you. But going back-to-back seasons of 4-13, not a great look. All right, let's get into our next topic of today's show. So this broke right before the Super Bowl, I think on the Super Bowl day, that Aaron Rodgers, the Jets will not be moving forward with Aaron Rodgers. Jay Glazer reported that Rodgers wants to play, went over to New Jersey to talk to staff, but they decided, you know what, we're not going to stick with you. Aaron Glenn's putting his foot down, and according, this is crazy, a report by Diana Rossini, I want to make sure I get this right, on Scoop City, along with coach Chase Daniel, it seems like the Jets gave Rodgers an ultimatum. This is what Diana Rossini said, and I quote, I was told that when they had conversations with Aaron Rodgers about what the future would look like, if you're going to be a part of this team, you're going to attend all of training camp, you're not going to do the Pat McAfee interviews anymore. They had a conversation with him of, quote, if you were to stay here, here's how we want it to be. This is Aaron getting his control. This is what the Jets haven't had the past 2 seasons, because it's been Aaron Rodgers being the assistant GM. Aaron Glenn, which Robert Saleh didn't want to do, because he didn't want to upset your new quarterback that the fans really have hope for. Aaron Glenn's putting his foot down and saying, you're not going on the Pat McAfee show? You're not going to take the random trip to Egypt? You're going to be here? And apparently they're not moving forward. Rodgers didn't want to do that, so he's out as the Jets quarterback moving forward. Yeah. I would like to say before I ask you the question, Rodgers' projected teams, the favorites are Steelers, Raiders, Niners, Vikings, and Titans. That rounds up the top 5, and then there's others, Colts, Rams, Giants, Browns, Jets, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, the top 5 teams, Steelers, Raiders, Niners, Vikings, Titans. That rounds out the 5 probable teams that Rodgers could go to. So here's my question to you. Are you surprised that the Jets would move off of Aaron Rodgers after it seems like the past 2 franchises, he's really held hostage a little bit? Or are you surprised the Jets finally put their foot down and Aaron Glenn saying, not today?
I'm not that surprised. I mean, he was getting hammered by the media in New York, and the Jets kind of listened to that a little bit, I think. Aaron Glenn really coming out, some of his comments I was a little surprised by. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a 4-time MVP quarterback, and he questioned his, dedication, I don't know. I was a little surprised at Aaron Glenn's comments. My guess is this is probably a huge mistake by the Jets because they can't get it right at quarterback. They have rarely gotten it right. Joe Namath, they got that right. I guess you could argue that Vinny Testaverde, they claimed him and they got that right. He took him to the AFC Championship game, and maybe Mark Sanchez was right for 2 years was right. And that's it. They've had armies of quarterbacks that have gone through the Jets. I just think this will wind up, you wait and see, it'll wind up being a huge mistake. Aaron Rodgers will go somewhere next year and have a great year. I mean, his year, you look at his stats, didn't really turn out all that bad. And particularly for a Jets quarterback, you could look at it and say, wow, he did really well. But they part ways with him. There's no heir apparent. There's no real obvious answer in free agency or the draft. You can look at Tyrod Taylor. I think that would be a mistake based on his age and his injuries. He played all of 36 snaps last year. You have Jordan Travis, who is an interesting developmental prospect. I mean, he had that terrible leg injury, broken leg, and playing for Florida State. He maybe he's a wild card. Maybe he's somebody that could come in there, and I think he should get a look for sure. There's free agents, Darnold, Wilson, Fields. Darnold not going back to the Jets. I mean, he's still got to have a sour taste in his mouth from that. Russell Wilson, I don't know. Maybe he winds up there. Justin Fields would be. I think any team that could get him that is really in need of a quarterback, I would give him. And at the Jets, I'd give him a look for sure. And then there's Daniel Jones. He's not coming back to New York. Just the way he played here, I'm sure the Jets aren't going to go get him. And then there's Kirk Cousins, who is not a free agent, but he's going to be released probably. Interestingly, the Vikings' former GM Spielman is with the Jets as a senior football advisor. He's probably big on Cousins, and you only got to pay Cousins $1.2 million next year. The Vikings are paying the Falcons are paying $27.5 million for him. So I really think Kirk Cousins is going to get a hard look, and there's a very good chance that he'll wind up being their quarterback. Rodgers have $49 million of dead cap charges. That's pretty expensive. You look at the draft, the two best guys are going to be gone before you get to number 7, where the Jets are drafting. There's Dart, Milroe, and Evers, and Ewers, the Texas quarterback. Those guys are, they're not the top tier, but maybe the Jets, and they probably can be had in the second round, so maybe you don't use your first round pick for one of those three. Rodgers hasn't said whether he'll continue to play next year or not, but I would think he'd want to, given the way he's been. He doesn't want to go out in his career with the image that he has right now, which is horrible.
Well, I know one team that's probably not going to want him, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers, because their starting safety, Deshaun Elliott, made it very clear, direct quote, leave his bleep at the retirement home. Not a great look if you bring him into Pittsburgh, and the starting safety is already saying, leave his bleep in the retirement home. So my guess is not going to go with that. And by the way, I don't know if Arthur Smith and Rodgers would be the perfect, couple in paradise over there, because I think the philosophies kind of don't work. You have Rodgers, who is not as mobile anymore and who under pressure crumbles because he's 41 years old. Not great behind an offensive line that Mike Tomlin can never get right. And a bunch of talent that isn't really talent. And also, you're probably not going to sign Najee Harris because you haven't really appreciated him. I think you denied his 5th-year option. He put up 1,000 yards, but what does 1,000 yards now mean in today's NFL when you play 17 games? I'm not sure if 1,000 yards cuts it. Maybe we need to boost it to 1,200.
It's still a lot of yards.
It is, but we play 17 games now. So do we need to say 1,100 yards, the new 1,000 yards? I'm not sure. But when it comes down to Rodgers, I'm actually going to be glass half full. Because I think it was right quarterback, wrong time. Or rather, wrong role. Because Rodgers came to the New York Jets as the answer. As the guy who is the last piece of the puzzle. That's unfair. Because the last time we saw Rodgers, he was a guy who couldn't even make the playoffs with the Green Bay Packers. Made his wide receiver quit because Rodgers took too much money. 3 years, $150 million fully guaranteed. Devontae Adams got his butt out of there and went over to the Las Vegas Raiders to team up with Derek Carr, who, by the way, didn't even last the full year with Las Vegas at the time. But yeah, Rodgers decided to go over to the Jets as their savior. That was the big thing. They finally got a quarterback. and it completely fell apart. 4 plays in, he ruptured his Achilles. Then he comes in this season, we have basically the same expectations because they got a better offensive line. Breece Hall was healthy. He was going to team up with Garrett Wilson. We saw the offseason throws, the highlight reels that the Jets PR team was putting out, and all the highlight, whatever the case may be. And then they eventually got Devontae Adams after a couple of games throughout the season. But I think when it comes down to it, it was the right quarterback, just the wrong role. I think Rodgers played effectively enough in the second half of the season when he was finally getting back into rhythm. Because obviously you come back from an Achilles injury. We saw what Kirk Cousins looked like. He was a statue the entire season. Rodgers was at least a little bit better than that because he tore his Achilles 4 snaps into week 1. Kirk Cousins did it 8 weeks into the prior season, so the recovery time is a little bit better in Rodgers' case. But once we saw midway through the year, the production picked up a little bit, but it wasn't enough. Late game situations turned into blame game for Rodgers, blaming other people for where they should be when you didn't really practice with them. You brought in you had Mike Williams in there, but you couldn't get a connection with him. You couldn't develop a connection with him. It really was Garrett Wilson, and then it turned into only Devontae Adams, and Garrett Wilson seems a little bit disgruntled. So for me, I don't think it's going to be the Steelers because if your starting safety is already saying keep your blank in the retirement home, not a great look. The Raiders, he fits the Raiders mantra and kind of what the Raiders fandom is. I think Rodgers would fit in beautifully there. But I think that based on all the reporting with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, with the Steelers potentially moving off Russ in favor of Justin Fields, Pete Carroll may want to team up with Russ again. The 49ers is the interesting one because Brock Purdy still has a year left before they actually need to pay him because he's not eligible for a 5th-year option. So he's eligible this season for an extension. And Jed York, the owner, and John Lynch both say they want to keep him here for a long time. But not at the $60 million price tag. I think that's where the quarterback situation, contractually, it's not, the next best quarterback. It's just the next quarterback up. I think that's what the contract situation has turned into. If Brock Purdy even has a 5 at the start of his contract or mid-5s, I think that's overpay completely for a guy who crumbles late in games. He doesn't have a clutch factor to him. And especially if it rains a little bit, Brock Purdy's a shell of himself. So I don't think if you're not paying him $65 million, he's not worth that money. He's not worth $60 million. By the way, once again, we can't take a look at Dak Prescott and say, well, he's the next guy up. He's the standard we set. It's unfair. Deshaun Watson wasn't the standard. I don't think that Trevor Lawrence is the standard. Or even, I don't think right now Jordan Love is the standard. He needs to earn his contract. Trevor Lawrence right now hasn't earned his contract. Dak Prescott, we just saw him get hurt. And he didn't look that great at the start of this year. He went, 2-7 to start the year out? It was bad. Really bad. So for me, the glass half full. Rodgers will get a job. I think he will start next season. Because apparently he still wants to play. Obviously, we can go down the storyline route and say, you know what? The Vikings are a good one because that's the exact same route that Brett Favre had. Packers, 1 year starting with the Jets, then Vikings. Rodgers it came down to because I'm knocking that 2023 season out. With the Packers, goes to the Jets, starts for 1 full year, then goes to the Vikings. Because I think we don't know what J.J. McCarthy's healing process looks like. He's still technically injured. Now, the contract situation is the big one. What's the issue with Aaron Rodgers' contract? He's going to want more money? Or is he going to finally, get rid of his ego for half a second and say, you know what? I'm 41. I'm going to just cruise on by. Give me whatever you want to give me. I'm not going to be asking for $50 million or 45 or 40. Brock Purdy deal, or rather the Baker Mayfield deal, $33 million, doesn't seem so bad.
Won't the acquiring team get a deal because he's
was it
$49 million of dead cap money with the Jets?
So a veteran minimum, you think?
Maybe, yeah, that would be okay, right? I would say the Vikings would be a great decision for the Vikings because if he goes there and plays well, then that gives McCarthy a year to watch, former MVP. And it gives him time to really show that he's healed. And if Rodgers doesn't play that well, then you can bring McCarthy in and see what he can do. So
I think that Rodgers only has 1 year left. I think that again, and who knows? Maybe Rodgers doesn't have a market at all because if he wouldn't agree to show up to training camp and stop being on the Pat McAfee show, to play football. Who says another team that needs a quarterback who could look at the past year with the Jets and say, well, his production was okay, but I'm hearing reports about teammates having to walk on eggshells around to always please him. And also that halfway through the year, reportedly the Jets are waving the white flag of defeat, saying, I want the season to be over already. What does that say to a team with a young core? With how about a young quarterback who's trying to learn how to win in the NFL? What does that say?
Well, maybe there isn't a market for him. I would say that would he go to a team with a 1-year deal? I would think he'd want a 2-year deal.
But he was 90% retired before he even came to the Jets.
He said that, but then he's played. I mean, and then he went through all that rehab with his Achilles to be able to play this past year. So he still got fire. No matter what he says, actions speak louder than words. He's been out there. He wanted to play.
You know what his actions say? I'm gonna go to Egypt during mandatory minicamp.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
ayahuasca.
I'm gonna take ayahuasca. I'm gonna basically create an Aaron Rodgers bubble and not let anyone in because I'm my own guy instead of being a team player. It's not a good look.
No,
there's a reason why the Packers decided enough was enough.
If he wants to
went
play,
on a darkness retreat.
If he wants to play,
no contact
and a
with
team can get him for $1.2 million, he's going to get a chance somewhere for sure. Now, would he want to go to a team like the Titans? Probably not. I mean, they're pretty bad. But would he want to go to the Vikings? For sure.
Maybe.
For sure he would.
Because you have Jordan Addison, you have Justin
Would he want to go to the
Jefferson,
Steelers? Yeah, he would want to go there. Sure. They're a playoff team last year. So, there's some teams he'd want to go to and teams that would have good teams that would have an interest in him. So, it's going to be fun to watch.
Why do I like the 49ers?
I don't think that, to me, that is never going to happen. That's not going to happen.
You got 2 years left on Purdy's deal.
I predict that that's not going to happen.
The Steelers, the Steelers are the favorite. But I can't see if your starting safety's already coming out and saying...
Well, who cares what your starting safety says? He's not running the show.
Because he's a player for your team.
He's not running the show.
He's a player for your team.
The GM can go call him in and say, hey, shut up. You're not making any decisions here. We are.
Fair. The Colts, no. Rams, no. Giants, hell no. Browns, no.
Has Stafford made a decision yet about what he's going to do?
Right now...
He should come back.
I don't want to give away Friday's whole show, but apparently Stafford and the Giants have been linked. Just throw it out there. There's a report out there.
He's a free agent?
No, he's not a free agent, but a trade, obviously. We got to dive into the reporting.
Who the Giants got that they could trade? Neighbors?
Hell no. Defensive guy. Who knows? We'll talk about it on Friday. I'm sure that'll be a Friday.
I think the Rams should hang on to Stafford the way he played. They gave the Eagles the toughest game in the playoffs.
I mean, first of all, there's a lot that we can get into for the offseason. Like, for instance, there's a report out there earlier this week, or late last week, actually, that the Titans could trade out of the number 1 spot. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have an offensive line. And they also don't have a running game. And your wide receiver core is Calvin Ridley and who? Trade out of the 1 spot. And your defense is pretty bad as well. Trading out of the 1 spot, and especially in this draft class, who's really the solidified number 1 guy? You can't say anybody.
Yeah.
Cam Ward, are we sure? Abdul Carter, maybe? Travis Hunter? Shedeur Sanders? Like, there's no one that, like, for instance, every single quarterback this past draft class would beat out every single quarterback. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, beat out every single quarterback in this draft class. All 6 in the first round. No doubt in my mind. So that just shows you how weak, or maybe how strong the other draft class was. But the fact that there's no separation in really anybody. There's no Marvin Harrison Jr. skill. Like, Travis Hunter is the guy. But people are choosing Abdul Carter to the Browns, or who knows. It's crazy. But no, Rodgers, this was a smart move. I'm a little bit surprised, actually, that Aaron Glenn, the new guy, putting his foot down and saying, no.
He came out and said, you know what? We're not a team that's going to be about one player. It's about all the players.
He
really beat up on Aaron Rodgers.
Amen to that. Yeah. Because he came from the Detroit Lions, who were 3-13-1 in Dan Campbell's first year, and the Lions turned into one of the most beloved franchises the past 2 seasons just because everybody loves Dan Campbell.
They said Mike Williams, Aaron Rodgers threw him under the bus, and then backed up and ran over him again.
Yeah, he was blaming him for a deep route that obviously, if you don't practice with the guy all the time, that you're not going to know.
Yeah.
Like Rodgers, that first few weeks of the season, do we have to go to the Vikings one that got Robert Saleh fired? Rodgers threw 2 or 3 interceptions, one of them pick six. Then Woody Johnson was over there, whining, and then had his sons come into the locker room and start bashing some of the teammates. Like the Jets organization is terrible. They never got quarterback right. The offensive line was a disappointment. The running game wasn't great. Wide receivers, it turned into originally the Garrett Wilson show, and then it turned into Devontae Adams and made Garrett Wilson not so happy. It was never a cohesive unit here. And then the defense, after Robert Saleh left, was a complete disappointment. The Jets just a bad franchise. They have the longest playoff drought in
I
the
guarantee
sports
you this decision will be
right now.
be viewed next year, at the end of next year, as a bad mistake. You wait and see. I bet it will be considered bad, unless
5-12.
Maybe Jordan Travis comes out of nowhere.
Not a chance. He was out the whole year.
Yeah, but now he should be recovered now. He should be able to play this year.
I'm going to make a call. Kirk Cousins to the Jets.
Yeah, I think that's
Kirk
right.
Cousins.
I think it's going to happen. $1.2 million. How can you go wrong? Huh?
Well, I mean,
it can't be any worse than than the last 2 years.
I mean, would Kirk Cousins get the veteran minimum if the Falcons release him?
It's a low bar, beating out Rodgers' performance this past year and Zach Wilson the year before.
By the way, Zach Wilson had a better year. I think every single season that Zach Wilson played, he had a better year than Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you go 5-12, how much worse can you be? There's really not a lot of wiggle room in record-wise. You got 5 wins of wiggle room. Can you maintain a 5-12 record with, in your case, Jordan Travis or Sam Darnold? Or
why not?
Kirk Cousins
should be able to. John, I don't think Darnold. He's not going there. He's not going back to the Jets.
You don't think so?
No, he doesn't want to be there. He can't have any good memories of being with the Jets. I don't know what they would be. The media were all over him, brutalized him. The organization treated him poorly. If I were him, I wouldn't touch the Jets. They're bad. They're bad news for him.
Well, I would say that, Kirk Cousins, you wouldn't get a veteran minimum.
Yeah, you can. You can get him for the veteran minimum. The Falcons will owe him the difference.
Not if they release him? Which that looks like what it's going to be. That's what the report was.
They're just going to release
months ago. It was the Falcons are going to be done with him. And there was a report saying that by March or something, the beginning of the new league year, they're going to release him.
Well, they still owe him a lot of money, right? So another team.
Well, they got all the guaranteed money that they had to spend on him.
Yeah,
but still, wouldn't that be a new contract?
I don't know. That's something we should look at.
I'm pretty sure it'd be a new. I mean, you have to sign him if
we should look at that and see what the ins
Kirk
and outs
Cousins though. That's my guess. Let's get to our final topic of today's show. We already talked about this a couple weeks ago when there was the expectation that this coordinator would be signed. Then it was official that the Saints are going to have hired former Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore to be their next head coach. Kellen Moore had a season right now with the Eagles, who they just ended up winning the Super Bowl here. One of the more dominant offenses in NFL history, having the 2,000-yard rusher and with Jalen Hurts being a very, very effective quarterback, along paired up with a tremendous defense, the number 1 defense in the NFL. But the offense is nothing to sneeze at. Saquon Barkley, only the 9th 2,000-yard rusher, going up to a Saints team that has a lot of issues. So here's my question to you. Do you think it was a good hire for the New Orleans Saints to hire now former Eagles offense coordinator Kellen Moore?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a good hire. I think he looks really good coming in. Look what he did in the playoffs. He was had the top scoring team in the offense in the playoffs, 36.3 points per game. The rushing offense was phenomenal. His quarterback play was very good in the playoffs, and during the regular season, at 27.2 points per game, that was 7th. That's pretty good too. I think that he's 36 years old to be one of the youngest coaches in the league. The owner said Kellen is the right person to help us reestablish a winning program and culture that our fans are accustomed to and have come to expect. So he goes in there with high hopes. Sirianni said, I wish you would stay. Would you consider staying? I guess it was kind of a joke in a way because he's getting big money and he's going to be a head coach. There's only 32 head coaching jobs, so definitely wanted to do that. He's only 36 years old. He could have a very long career being a head coach if things work out. He was only with the Eagles for a year, actually. The Eagles will have be going on their third offensive coordinator in 3 years, which is pretty interesting. And really interesting for you here, Brandon Staley is the leading candidate to be the Saints defensive coordinator. It's funny, he and Moore are switching roles. Moore was Staley's offensive coordinator in 2023 at the Chargers. So Staley will be going to work for Moore when Moore worked for him in 2023. I'd say fixing the Saints defense is job number one here, and Kellen Moore is an offensive guy, so he's going to need a strong defensive coordinator. We didn't like Staley as a head coach. He really was quite poor at that, but as a defensive coordinator, he has had some success, so he looks like the leading candidate to get that job. It's going to be a major priority for them, for Moore, as their defense allowed the third most points last year, and the yards, 379. No, actually, that's the points they allowed. Almost 380 points. That's really bad. And then one of the youngest head coaches in the league now, and he comes from offensive side of the ball. He was a quarterback for Boise State from 2007 to 2011, and for the Lions and the Cowboys in the NFL. He started coaching in 2017 after he retired from the Cowboys. He was a Cowboys quarterback coach for 2017 and 18, and the offensive coordinator 2019 to 22, and the Chargers OC in 2023 and the Eagles this past year. His offenses are ranked fifth compared to all other NFL teams in the time he's been an offensive coordinator since 2019. In points, they per game, 26.4, and yards per game, 376. His quarterbacks have had a QBR of 62.1, which is also fifth. So he's done okay as an offensive coordinator. I think he's a good choice for the Saints.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think that it's unfortunate for any head coach to come over to the Saints in their current state because they're not an ideal position for anybody. They're negative $51 million in cap space. They've been in cap hell for several seasons at this point, and they got a lot of issues. A lot of issues. The first one would be, your starting quarterback has a massive cap hit, so you're going to need to stick with Derek Carr for another season, who has fallen off the face of the earth. And honestly, putting the ball in harm's way, meaning he's gotten Chris Olave concussed over and over and over again. I would say one thing is that they need a new general manager. I think that's the first thing. You got to make some big-time moves. You got to take some swings. We're seeing some of the top teams make some swings. Howie Roseman's making some swings. We see the Chiefs making some swings. We see a lot of these top-tier teams making massive moves, and that's what the Saints need to do. But it's difficult because negative $51 million in cap space isn't great. So right now, my guess would be, if I had to project when the Saints could actually start building a decent roster in arguably one of the worst, actually, it used to be the worst division in football, but that goes to the AFC South now. But I would say that they're either the first or the second lowest or the third lowest worst division in the National Football League. If you're finally going to get relief, my guess would be in about 3 years. I don't think they're going to let Kellen Moore last 3 years. Because you're going to need to get off Derek Carr. You have a very old team. You have one of the oldest teams in the NFL. Right now, the direction is pretty much either down or stagnant, already at a low position. There's not much to build off of. I mean, you have a couple very young guys, and some of those young guys I'll list off now if I can get it briefly for us here. If I can't, here we go. Brian Breesy, Carl Grandison, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and Alante Taylor. Those are your young talents. Outside of them, you don't really have much. You decided to go after Willie Gay in the offseason and then benched him. What's the point of signing him if you're just going to leave him on the bench? What's the contradiction here? It's not exactly the ideal thing here. And you can't really dump everybody because we saw what the 2014 Saints look like where they went 3 straight seasons going 7-9. And that's with Drew Brees and Sean Payton at the helm. Not exactly an ideal look, especially with Derek Carr or, in case he gets hurt again, Spencer Rattler at quarterback. Not a great look whatsoever. And think about it. We have to realize, was it 2 years ago, when they first got Derek Carr, there was a lot of hope out there. We got a lot of backlash for saying, maybe the Saints would need to tone it down a little bit, but they could be good. We got a lot of hate from Saints fans saying, this team's great, the easiest strength of schedule here, all this. They went 9-8. 9-8 after having by the way, the past 2 seasons, they've had either the first or second easiest schedule in the NFL.
Yeah.
And it led to a 9-8 record, and was it 5-12 this year?
Yeah, well, that's one thing Kellen Moore's got going for him is he's playing in a weak division, basically, right? The Falcons are still a question mark in my mind. Now they're going to be going with Penix
You don't
as
like
their quarterback.
Penix. You don't trust him.
I don't know. Basically, you could say he's a rookie again because he didn't play. He played 2 games. Yeah. And then you've got the Panthers in that division, right? Although I think they'll be better. And then you got the Tampa Bay, who that's a pretty good team actually, but they have tough luck. They have tough luck
in some cases.
So that's not the worst division to go to. You're right. They've got the cap problem. Derek Carr, I think, is going to be their quarterback. There was some talk that maybe Cooper Rush, they could get him to come over. But he's a backup. He's a career backup. So, if Derek Carr plays terrible, it'd be better to put Cooper Rush in there, who plays well as a backup, than to have a Rattler in there. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I think he's a good pickup, and I wish him well.
We realize their defense is. I mean, they have a couple, young guys, some rookies out there already, but their defense was ranked 30th. They were in 30th in total defense and 19th in points allowed. They couldn't stop anybody through the air. They couldn't stop anybody on the ground. They had the second worst rush defense in the NFL. So you're gonna trust? Make sure I get this right. Are you really gonna go out there and trust Demario Davis to keep beating Father Time a little bit? Is that what you're really gonna trust?
Well, maybe for one more year.
One more year. I mean, how many years do you got left? Because you have to realize Cam Jordan is also aging, and he's expensive. Very expensive. Tyrann Mathieu, since leaving the Chiefs, has been nothing.
Yeah.
Because he's on the New Orleans Saints, not a great team. You're going to have to figure out the cap situation, because what the Saints have done for years at this point is just get just above the cap. Just go into the black there instead of being in the red all the damn time. And then you kind of work with what you got. You can't keep doing that. At some point, you have to cut bait. These players either retire or you move off them. You can't move off everybody, because then who you'll have? The cap situation has been the main hindrance here. You have a conservative GM. You had a conservative play caller in Carmichael the past couple seasons. You just fired Dennis Allen this past season. Had an interim, it was a special teams coach, come out there and be the head coach, and he won a couple games here and there. But ultimately, this team is just a very, very bad team. It has a couple nice pieces like Chris Olave, Shaheed, Alvin Kamara. There's pieces there. There's just not, the entire team itself is a massive, massive question mark. So can Kellen Moore come in and fix things? Well, I think the first thing we're going to need to see from Kellen Moore is you're going to have to sort of establish what you do with the Philadelphia Eagles. Establish an effective running game, which maybe Kamara could do, but Kamara is aging. So, I don't know. The Saints.
Well, maybe you can get Derek Carr to play better.
That would help. Or have this. Have him not get hurt. Because he was a 500 quarterback this past season. But, the past couple seasons, I should say. Yeah, he went 5-5. I was right. Just don't let him get hurt. He got an AC injury a couple times, and he got blown up. The offensive line, a lot of there was a couple injuries there, people playing terribly. The Saints are just a disappointing team. In my opinion, the second worst division in football.
Yeah.
Because all you have to worry about is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, by the way, this past season was out with Mike Evans for a couple of games, and Chris Godwin was out the back end of the season. And you couldn't do anything because you were basically out of it. Derek Carr ended up getting hurt, and you left with Spencer Rattler out there as quarterback, who, by the way, went 0-6, 57% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns, 5 picks, a solid passer rating of 70.4. Not great. The Saints have too many issues. And the 9th overall pick in the draft? This is not a good quarterback draft, so you're going to go for your future?
Yeah, well, there's only 32 head coaching jobs out there. Kellen Moore is getting big money to go there. I think he made the right decision.
You had the job and turned it down? Cliff Kingsbury. He was told, the job's yours if you want to take it. He said, I'll take the Commander's job with a promising quarterback, really good defense.
I think that makes a lot of sense for him. It's a different situation.
It is.
Yeah.
But Kingsbury had an opportunity to become the head coach again. Instead went to Kellen
He'll get
Moore.
another chance, too, I think.
Oh, absolutely. He just got a chance this year, first year back.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a whole thing. All right, well, that does wrap up today's show of the Harvey Hour. We will be back. A lot of teasers. If you watch this entire show, you realize there was a bunch of teasers for Friday's show. A lot of topics, a lot of news going on. I can't pack it into one thing because what we have on Friday, there's Cowboy news. Micah Parsons potentially on the move there. We'll talk about that. Saquon Barkley's talking three-peat potentially, or at least a dynasty, I should say. There's a lot of moving pieces in the NFL. Free agency's coming up in a couple weeks here. It's going to be very, very insane, I would say. Things are going to ramp up quickly. The schedule of the Harvey Hour may change, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But for this episode of the Harvey Hour, my name's Nathan Harvey. That's my dad, Stephen Harvey. We have been the host of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Friday, 6 to 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Good night, Grandpa.
Traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online. And Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley eSIM data gift